The Sorcerer's Apprentice refers to different stories, but the most famous tells of a sorcerer's apprentice who enchants a broom to do his chores but can't stop it, leading to a flood and a powerful lesson about finishing what you start when his master returns to end the chaos. This tale, originating from an 18th century German poem by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, was later popularized by Disney's Fantasia, 1940, and a 2010 film of the same name. This particular story has become a powerful symbol for any situation where a subordinate given a small amount of power or knowledge initiates a process they cannot control, ultimately leading to disaster that must be resolved by a more experienced authority. The enduring appeal of this narrative lies in its simple yet profound caution against overreaching and the misuse of power without full understanding. It serves as a timeless warning about the dangers of unchecked ambition and the importance of respecting the boundaries of one's own knowledge and skill. The tale has been retold in countless forms, from classical music compositions to modern cinematic blockbusters, each adaptation adding new layers to the core message, but always retaining the central theme of a lesson learned the hard way. Its universal message ensures that The Sorcerer's Apprentice remains relevant to audiences of all ages, resonating with anyone who has ever felt the temptation to take a shortcut, only to find themselves in over their heads. The traditional tale, Goethe's poem, the setup. An old sorcerer goes out, leaving his apprentice with many chores. The story begins within the dusty, cluttered workshop of a powerful sorcerer, a place filled with arcane books, bubbling potions, and mysterious artifacts. The master of this magical domain, an aged and wise sorcerer, decides to depart for a time, leaving his young and eager apprentice in charge of the household. Before leaving, he assigns a long list of mundane but necessary tasks to the boy. Chief among these chores is the arduous job of fetching water from a nearby well and using it to fill a large cauldron inside the workshop. It is a repetitive and physically demanding task, one that the apprentice has performed countless times before under the watchful eye of his master. This time, however, the apprentice is left alone, unsupervised, surrounded by the powerful tools of his master's trade. The scene is perfectly set for a mixture of youthful impatience and burgeoning magical ambition to collide, creating the ideal conditions for a lesson that will be anything but ordinary. The departure of the sorcerer signifies a temporary removal of order and wisdom, leaving a vacuum that the apprentice's immaturity and partial knowledge will soon fill with chaos. The workshop, once a place of controlled and purposeful magic, is about to become a stage for an experiment gone horribly wrong. The apprentice's plan. The apprentice, tired of carrying water, remembers a spell for a broom to fetch water and enchanting it with the sorcerer's magic hat. As the apprentice begins the tiresome task of hauling bucket after bucket of water, his mind starts to wander. He groans under the weight of the water, and his frustration grows with each trip to the well. He thinks of all the incredible magic he has witnessed his master perform, spells that could move mountains or command the elements. It seems utterly unfair that he, a student of such powerful arts, should be relegated to such dull manual labor. It is in this moment of weariness and resentment that a dangerous idea begins to form. He recalls seeing his master use a particular incantation to bring inanimate objects to life, making them perform simple tasks. Specifically, he remembers a spell to animate a broomstick. Fueled by a desire to avoid his work and a foolish confidence in his own abilities, the apprentice decides to put his limited knowledge to the test. He spies his master's pointed sorcerer's hat, an object imbued with immense magical power, left behind in the workshop. Believing the hat will amplify his own fledgling magic, he places it upon his head, stands before an old broom propped against the wall, and begins to recite the magical words he only partially remembers. His plan is simple, and his mind brilliant. He will make the broom do his work for him, allowing him to rest and enjoy his freedom. The brooms work. The broom obeys, bringing water to fill the room, but the apprentice doesn't know the spell to make it stop. To the apprentice's initial delight and astonishment, the spell works. The old wooden broom shudders, shakes, and then suddenly sprouts two spindly arms, which grasp a nearby bucket. With a jerky, determined gait, the animated broom marched out of the workshop, heads to the well, fills the bucket with water, and returns to pour it into the cauldron. The apprentice laughs with glee, proud of his cleverness and magical prowess. He settles down in a comfortable chair, puts his feet up, and watches with satisfaction as his magical servant tirelessly performs the chore. The broom is relentless, moving back and forth between the well and the workshop with an unthinking, single-minded purpose. Soon, the cauldron is full to the brim, but the broom does not stop. It continues its programmed task, pouring water onto the floor around the cauldron. At first, the apprentice is amused by the broom's persistence, but his amusement quickly turns to concern as a small puddle grows into a large pool. He stands up and commands the broom to cease its work, shouting, "Stop! That's enough!" But the broom, animated by a powerful spell, does not respond to simple verbal commands. It is then that a cold dread begins to creep into the apprentice's heart. He had learned the spell to start the magic, but he had never bothered to learn the incantation to make it end. The escalation. The room floods, and in desperation, the apprentice chops the broom in half. Panic sets in as the water level on the floor rises rapidly. The workshop is transforming into a swirling indoor lake. Books float off their shelves, and delicate potion ingredients are ruined as the water sloshes against the tables. The apprentice tries to physically block the broom's path, but the enchanted object simply pushes past him, its focus solely on its unending mission to fetch water. The situation is spiraling out of control, and the apprentice's pride has given way to sheer terror. He realizes the magnitude of his mistake. He has unleashed a magical force that he cannot command. In a moment of pure desperation, his eyes fall upon a heavy wood-chopping axe leaning against the wall. Thinking he can destroy the magical servant he created, he grabs the axe, waits for the broom to return with another bucket of water, and with a mighty swing, he chops the broomstick clean in two. For a brief, hopeful moment, the two pieces of the broom fall lifelessly to the floor. The apprentice breathes a sigh of relief, believing he has finally solved the problem and ended the watery chaos that he himself had created. He stands panting amidst the wreckage of the flooded room, thinking the worst is over. More chaos. Each piece of the broom comes to life and starts fetching water, making the flood worse. The apprentice's relief is tragically short-lived. To his absolute horror, the two splintered halves of the broom begin to twitch and stir on the flooded floor. Then, in a terrifying multiplication of his original problem, both pieces of the destroyed broom spring back to life. Each half sprouts its own new set of arms, grabs a bucket, and joins the task of fetching water. Instead of one relentless water carrier, there are now two. His desperate act to stop the chaos has only succeeded in doubling it. The two new brooms work with the same unthinking diligence as the original, marching to the well and pouring even more water into the already hopelessly flooded workshop. The water level rises at an alarming rate, now reaching the apprentice's knees. He scrambles onto a table to escape the deluge, watching in utter despair as his two magical creations work in perfect, disastrous harmony. The flood becomes a raging torrent, threatening to wash away everything in the workshop and drown the foolish apprentice who started it all. He is now completely powerless, a prisoner of his own magical shortcut, trapped in a nightmare of his own making. The situation has escalated from a manageable problem to a full-blown catastrophe, far beyond his ability to contain or correct. The masters return. The old sorcerer returns to find his apprentice nearly drowned. Just as the water rises to the apprentice's neck and all hope seems lost, the main door of the workshop swings open. Standing on the threshold is the old sorcerer, his master, who has returned to a scene of absolute pandemonium. He takes in the sight before him. His workshop is almost completely submerged. Priceless magical items are ruined, and his apprentice is clinging to a floating table, moments away from being completely overcome by the flood. The two enchanted brooms continue their work, oblivious to the destruction they are causing. The master's eyes, filled with an ancient and powerful wisdom, instantly assess the situation. He sees not just the flood, but the magical signature of the spell at work. and he immediately understands what his apprentice has done. There's no surprise on his face, only a stern and disappointed resignation, as if he had always known that the boy's impatience would one day lead to such a disaster. His commanding presence fills the room, and the very air seems to grow still in anticipation of his next move. For the apprentice, the master's return is both a moment of profound shame and a beacon of desperate hope. He has failed spectacularly, but the one person who can fix his mess has finally arrived. The lesson. The sorcerer quickly breaks the spell and admonishes his apprentice for not knowing how to finish what he started, emphasizing that only a master should command powerful spirits. With a calm and authoritative gesture, the old sorcerer raises his hand and speaks a single powerful word of command. Instantly, the magic is broken. The two brooms freeze in place, drop their buckets, and revert to being simple, inanimate pieces of splintered wood. With another wave of his hand, the great flood of water recedes, flowing out of the workshop as quickly as it had entered, until the floor is merely damp. The chaos is over. The master then turns his stern gaze upon his soaking, shivering, and deeply ashamed apprentice. He does not shout, but his quiet voice carries more weight than any roar. He admonishes the boy, not for his ambition or his desire to use magic, but for his foolishness in starting a process he did not know how to conclude. The master explains that true power comes not from knowing how to begin a spell, but from having the wisdom and knowledge to control it from start to finish. He delivers the story's core message with grave finality. The powerful spirits and forces of magic are not to be trifled with by novices. They should only be called upon and commanded by a true master, one who understands the full consequences and responsibilities that come with wielding such power. The apprentice, humbled and terrified by his experience, has learned a lesson he will never forget.